And we're back with the program. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you coming back and listening to us. And oh my goodness, I'll tell you what, everywhere you go, all around the world, there is a universal language that everybody knows about, cares about, and truly that is very endearing to them. Okay, everyone, get your mind out into a different place now. We're not talking about that now. We're talking about food. And I'll tell you what, it's a great pleasure to have, a guy who I'll tell you what, he reached out to me and said, you got to get me on your podcast. You got to get me on your podcast. And I said, I took a look why. And I tell you what, after reading a little about him, listening to his great podcast, I am just so psyched to have him on the podcast here today. He is the host of the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast, which you can find on Libsyn, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast.fm, and Player.fm, and also as well the great blog. Well, it's great if you're not, hungry, because if you're hungry and you go on that blog, I'll tell you what, you're going to be a lot hungrier after going to that site. It is SmokingHotConfessions.com. It is the host of the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. It is Ben Arnot. Ben, is just great to have you here on the show, all the way from Queensland, Australia. Is that correct?
Yes, mate, that is correct. Thank you very much for having me on board. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on the show as well, talking some awesome food, awesome barbecuing, and we're talking to an award-winning barbecue grill master here, who's actually, he told me in confidence as far as what he's doing, and he just got out of a competition. As far as Ben, you finished really high over there back in Australia, and you are actually coming next year to the States as far as for the world competition of barbecuing. Is that correct?
Almost. We did do very well just last weekend down in Port Macquarie at its nickname is BBQ Wars because it's the biggest barbecue competition in Australia. It's actually the Blues and Barbecue Festival, and it's put on by the founders of the Australasian Barbecue Alliance over here. They're our governing body for competition barbecue. And last weekend it was just incredible. We were right on the side of the beach. So if you've ever seen a photo of an Australian beach, then you know what I'm talking about. We're right on the side of the beach. There was 101 teams there competing. We had it was the biggest competition not only in Australia but ever in the Southern Hemisphere, and also the biggest barbecue competition ever outside of the United States.
So, and I assume that you, and I know from what you told me as well, you placed very high in several competitions. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. So this one, just last weekend, of the 101 teams, we came third place overall. So we picked up a first in trophy. So we picked up a first in chicken, and we got to take home a 4-foot tall trophy on that. That was pretty damn cool. And sixth in pork ribs, which put us in third place overall, which puts us into the ballot draw to come to Texas to the World Championships in Houston in March next year, and that's actually drawn tomorrow. So it's going to be a very exciting day tomorrow.
I can imagine, indeed. And I wish you all the best with that, indeed. And I tell you what, it is just an honor to be talking to one of the premier grill masters, not only in the Southern Hemisphere, but also as well, I'm just going to say it, the entire world as well. Let's just give you all the props on that, because it's so great to have you here. But before we go into all the great stuff with your site and all the great stuff as far as juicy, tasty barbecuing and all that, I want you to tell me exactly what goes on. I've heard a couple episodes already, but tell me more and tell everybody out there why they should listen to the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast.
Well, I run my podcast a little bit differently to that some podcasts are done. I'm a teacher by profession, and so I tend to think in terms of start and finish points, like a syllabus, I guess. And I really want people to learn things, to listen to my podcast and come away with something. So episodes 1 to 10 are the series that I call Comp Ready. And in those 10 episodes, I talk to the best pit masters, butchers, suppliers, sponsors in the game here in Australia, and really pick their brains, get into the nitty gritty with them, and put that all together in a logical sequence so that you start with episode 1, finish with episode 10, and by the time you get to episode 10, you jump on my website, pick up your free ebook, and you're ready to jump into your first barbecue competition.
And that's something you
So
mentioned as well on your site. If people go to smokinghotconfessions.com, they can get a free ebook as far as better tips on as far as barbecuing. Is that correct?
yeah, it is. It is. It's called 27 Lessons Learned from Competition Barbecue. And in there, I've just put in some tips and advice and bits and pieces that I've picked up over the last couple of years in competition barbecue. And I've just compiled it all together, wrapped it up nicely, and put it out there for anybody that wants to have a read.
Oh, that's awesome indeed, especially if they're looking to create that better barbecue. And that's something that I think every, guy and gal out there that loves grilling, that loves to go out there, whether it's on a hot summer day or whether it's like right now in the fall with the American football season, or wherever you're at in Europe, in Mexico, wherever, everybody seems to love a good grilling. Even in the beautiful country of Australia as well, of course, from what you're telling me. So it's definitely a great pleasure indeed to be able to have that opportunity to put those beautiful, gorgeous meats on the grill and hear that sizzling and smell that beautiful, beautiful aroma. And oh my gosh, I'm making myself hungry. But anyways, a little bit first about your thoughts in regards to you said you've placed very high in almost all the categories. In fact, all the categories, especially chicken. But what are your favorite recipes? Because I looked through your blog and I found everything from how you're talking about bacon to obviously how you're looking to everything from sponsorships to the better smokers to right woods and whatnot. But when it comes to recipes, what do you seem to trend towards as far as maybe preparing for that competition? Is there a certain type of thing that you like to go to as something that is a mainstay of your barbecue grilling?
My personal favorite, I guess I'd have to say, would be beef ribs. So we're quite a beef-based country here in Australia, and we're quite similar to Texas in that regard. We have a lot of I think Texans do very well over here in Australia, and yeah, for me, it's got to be the beef rib. If you're looking at getting into competition barbecue, they are probably the most easygoing, most forgiving cut that you're going to find out there. It's pretty hard to mess up a beef rib.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. And that's what I truly, truly wanted to ask you as far as a differentiating factor between beef ribs. And I know some people actually prefer pork ribs, but that's what I wanted to really get into. And what is the major differences about cooking a beef rib as opposed to a slab of pork ribs? It said it's actually a lot more forgiving, but is there any other factors that weigh the beef ribs in its favor?
One of the things that I love about beef ribs is that they're basically set and forget. So I like to get my smoker up to 275 Fahrenheit, and I actually cook everything at that temperature at competitions. There are some people that they'll lower the temperatures for this one and that one, but I'm a bit I'm a bit lower maintenance than that. I like to just set it at 275 and then adapt my cooking methods to that temperature. So I get my smoker to 275. I season up my beef ribs and I stick them in there at 275, and then I leave them alone. I don't touch them until the internal temperature is 203. And I just find that all you have to do is chuck them in there and just leave them alone, and they just come out mint every time. So
Oh, that's
they are.
awesome. That makes it much easier than pork ribs as far as that. Is that correct?
Well, that's right. Yeah, if you're doing pork ribs, the most common way is the 3-2-1 method. And in America, you get much larger pork ribs. They're physically a much larger beast at the time that they're killed and processed. And so the 3-2-1 method that was pioneered in the States works really well. And so you've got your pork ribs, you season them up, You put them on the smoker for 3 hours, spritz them every now and again with some, I like to use a 50-50 mix of apple cider vinegar and apple juice. And then at the 3 hour mark, you put a bit of honey, butter, and brown sugar on them, and face down on some aluminium foil, wrap them up, put them back in the smoker for another 2 hours. And then after 2 hours, you unwrap them, glaze them with your favorite barbecue sauce, and put them back in the smoker for a final hour. So there's quite a lot of, I don't want to say messing about, because that, but there's a lot involved in getting some really tasty pork ribs. And if you're busy, if you're doing several things at once, if you're getting ready to, have people around for a party or something, I just love the beef ribs, mate. You just season them up, throw them in, forget about them for 10 hours till they're done, and they just come out like butter.
Now, I want to ask you as well, when you were talking, you obviously hinted at the 3-2-1, which actually I've actually tried to do in process, but not as well, obviously, as you have in the past before. But also when you're talking about sauces that you mentioned, that combination using vinegar and whatnot, but also what are good rubs that you seem to want to go to when you're talking about ribs? Because I know rubs are obviously a great part of grilling and barbecuing ribs as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what you'll find is that a beef rub is going to be very different from, say, a pork rub. So pork goes very well with a sweet rub. So you're going to want something with a lot of brown sugar in it. Some of the herbs and spices that lend themselves to a sweeter profile. Whereas beef, for example, in Texas, say, they tend to just do it with salt and pepper. So I think just about the most complex beef rub you're going to find pretty much is going to be salt, pepper, garlic, onion, and sometimes people even throw in a bit of coffee.
Fair enough indeed. Because I noticed once that use a particular rub such as that, even if it differentiates just a little bit, you can taste it indeed when it comes out. And definitely, especially, I agree with you. Beef ribs, excuse me, are definitely for me a little bit preferential to pork. But when it's cooked right, and it's on the plate there, it definitely, you can taste it, you can feel it, and definitely either a good sauce or good rub makes for definitely good barbecue there. But like I said earlier, you finished first with chicken. So what are some of the things that people need to understand when they're making, and as far as grilling and barbecuing, a good chicken? So, because obviously I'm talking to the right man when it comes to a barbecue chicken.
Are you talking for competitions, or are you talking for like backyard?
Both. What are some of the steps that you take, that obviously not giving away any trade secrets, mind you, but when you're in competition, as far as that, what are some of the steps that you take as far as when you prepare the chicken to the time when it's almost ready to be tried by the judges and whatnot? So.
Well, first of all, it all starts with having a good butcher who knows what they're doing when they're preparing the pieces of chicken for you. I always recommend going to a traditional butcher shop over, say, a supermarket, just because you get to build that relationship with the butcher, and you can say, "Hey, look, can you cut this a little bit more that way, a little bit less that way?" And they'll be happy to do that for you. So I actually work with Pure Meats Robina here on the Gold Coast, and they are just absolutely brilliant. So I get everything from them for my backyard, for my competitions, the whole lot. And I will actually, usually for competitions. So this competition just passed. I did things a little bit differently. Usually for competitions, I'll do either a cupcake chicken or a lollipop chicken. So the cupcake is a chicken thigh, which is smoked and cooked in a muffin pan. So the actual piece of chicken comes out shaped like a muffin top. It's kind of rounded on the
Very,
top.
very interesting.
Yeah. And the lollipop chicken is a drumstick with the little knob cut off the end, and then the meat and the skin pushed down, and you smoke that up, and they end up using the bone as a handle, and the meat just ends up like a little ball on the end, just like a lollipop. So I usually do things like that, and my butcher will actually do a lot of the preparation of that for me. Sorry, as he's breaking down the bird. And for this competition just passed, we went a little bit of a different way. and we did breasts and wings. So we got away from the red meat altogether, and we went with the white meat. And what a lot of people do that I see when I go and visit other people is they put a really sugar heavy sauce on the chicken and then try and grill it, and then they can't work out why it tastes sort of bitter and black
And that's what I wanted to
and
ask, because
burnt.
you had mentioned that you're sugar heavy, and I thought that's probably the outcome you're going to get, correct?
It is if you're grilling. So in competition barbecue, you're doing low and slow. So you're not cooking directly on top of the flame. Most of the cooking is done in either a vertical or an offset. So you've either got a foot or two of space between your fire and your flame, or it's offset. So the fire's in a separate box and the heat travels across horizontally into the cooking chamber, the heat and the smoke. And so you're able to cook at a much lower temperature, which while it takes uh, longer to cook, you end up with a much juicier, tender cut of meat. And things like the sugar in the spice rub, the sugar doesn't burn. So when you see people and they get like a real high sugar uh, marinade or something on a chicken, and they throw it straight onto a hot grill, they get that bitter, burnt flavor. It's not the actual chicken itself; it's the sugars in the marinades that are burnt in the super high heat. So depending on how you're cooking it, you need to sort of adjust your marinades and your rubs accordingly as well.
That's definitely some good information. Once again, we're with Ben Arnot. He is the host of the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. You can get it right now on Libsyn, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Player.fm, Overcast.fm, and also check out his amazing site. Like I said, don't do it if you're hungry. SmokingHotConfessions.com, because you will get even hungrier, rest assured, because there's some great recipes and great things I saw on that site. My goodness, in preparation for this interview, that I had to go eat after that. Let's just put it that way. But I want to ask, you know, obviously you are a premier and very high level competition barbecue and grill master. But I know out and about in the world that's out there, you often get a chance to interact with individuals that just cook at home and grill at home. And sometimes I see you, I would probably say, you'd probably say, hey, maybe you're not going about this the best way, or maybe there's some things you might want to change up. What are some of the things that usually you see that maybe people do in their preparation or the ingredients they use when they're cooking or grilling, that you see that maybe could be some tweaks that they could fix to make their food even better?
Well, yeah, I mean, I mentioned the grilling and the sugary rubs and marinades before. So if you're going to grill, try and stay clear of high sugar content marinades and rubs. But you know, there's all sorts of different things. We're experiencing a bit of a culture shift here in Australia. Charcoal and wood used to be the only way to cook. And if we were cooking outside, it was always charcoal and wood. I remember growing up as a kid, and my dad would actually set me to go run around the yard and go find all the sticks I could find in the yard, and he'd pile them up between a couple of bricks that he'd sit out on the yard, and then just throw a sheet of steel across it, and we'd cook up some just grill up some food on top of that. And then of course we had Weber's come aboard, come into Australia, and that sort of changed the scene there. And then something happened in the late 80s, early 90s. I can't really put my finger on it, but everybody went gas.
Yeah, propane,
And
I will tell you, in America is truly popular to the general consumer that's grilling out there. I mean, when we have access to either whether it's our own grill or we're going to a public park or something like that, a grill, through via gas, bring it via the canister and all that. It seems to be the preferential way that a lot of people have tendency to grill their meat.
mm, yeah, well, I think that the reason that a lot of people went gas was basically because it was so much quicker to get the heat. But now it's 20, 30 years later. Everything that's old is new again, as they say, and the culture around barbecue has shifted, and with that, we've got a lot more technology that we didn't have back then. So for $10 now, you can go to the hardware store and you can buy something called a charcoal chimney, and you set some firelighters on your grill, You fill the charcoal chimney full of charcoal, light the firelighters, sit the chimney on top of the firelighters, and through the way that it controls the air, it forces the air over the flames up through the charcoal, and you've got lit charcoal ready to grill in 15 minutes, which is, that's as long as it takes to get a propane grill all hot and ready.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. That's very, very interesting because that could, change the way people look, because even though propane, like I said, is currently more popular, still the best way to get flavor, obviously, from what you're inferring, and what I know from my experience as well, through obviously is through charcoal and wood.
absolutely, yeah, that is where I was going with that. Yeah, I'm just a bit long-winded today.
No, no problem at all. Believe me, we want as much description as you can give, because, like I said, there are a lot of people out there that are interested in how they can cook a better barbecue, even if it's not competition level per se, but they still want to know from the best that are out there how they can get their barbecue at home a lot better. And that's just obviously the best way that they could do it. And if they can, like you say, go and have easier access at the local hardware store or whatnot to create that environment that they can utilize wood and charcoal more often in their grilling, obviously that's a step in the right direction. But when it comes to maybe sauces and rubs, or things that people should try and go into, aside from obviously, like you said, ones with a high sugar content, are there any things that you suggest maybe they should try the next time they go out grilling?
um, my biggest tip would be to go to sea salt flakes and get yourself a nice steak. Make sure it's nice and thick, sort of 2 inches thick, 5 centimeters for the metric out there, and hit that with some sea salt flakes and some fresh cracked black pepper. The sea salt flakes and the cracked pepper, as opposed to the ground pepper in the shakers, is going to give you a real nice texture along the surface of the meat. And then I would recommend that you give a reverse sear a go, which is that is where you set your barbecue up for indirect cooking. So you'll have, if we're talking gas, then you'll have burners 1 and 2 on, but you put the meat over 3 and 4. And so 3 and 4 are off, 1 and 2 are on. You close the lid, the meat starts to cook in the indirect style. And so now this is going to come down to how hot your barbecue gets and the thickness of your steak, but roughly sort of 45 minutes to an hour ish. If you haven't got a meat thermometer, make sure you get one so you can check it. You're looking for about 140, 135, 140 Fahrenheit. You want to get the other side of the barbecue screaming hot. So if you're on charcoal, you want to actually put that steak on a plate and just gently tent it in aluminium foil to give it a rest without losing too much heat, while you leave the lid off the Weber or whatever and let the charcoal get all hot and angry again. And when that's screaming hot, put your steak on for about a minute or two on either side, get that real psss sound, and let it sit there, sizzle, 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 directly grilling it. And what you'll get is beautiful, medium rare, sort of pink, juicy steak meat on the inside, and a really delicious seared crust on the outside, which is going to have fantastic texture from those seared black pepper.
Oh, that's awesome. From, like you said, from sea salt flakes and black pepper to make a great steak, using those elements and combining those ingredients will definitely, and also the technique involved in regards to making sure that you used the 1 and 2 burners different from the 3 and 4 burners, and make sure that you utilize them correctly in order to make that steak just, oh my gosh, just so awesome indeed. I almost feel like getting some steak right now and potatoes and whatnot, and get that started right now this instant. But I'll tell you what, it's truly great to have you on it. Any last advice you would give anyone out there as far as cooking or whatnot? And then obviously, again, I want you to tell everyone out there why they need to listen to the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast.
Okay, I guess my last tip is just to really get out there and just give it a go and cook what you like. Don't worry about getting too experimental. There's 100 different recipes in each cookbook, and we've all got 15 cookbooks. find something that you like and nail that. Get that right, and then start branching out into things more complicated. Otherwise, you're going to get overwhelmed, and if you bite off more than you can chew, pun fully intended, if you bite off more than you can chew the first time, odds are you're not going to go back and try it again. So start off simple, something that you like. If you're not a big fan of chicken, don't set chicken as being your grill goal. If you're a steak guy or a steak gal, hit that reverse sear up that I was talking about before. Go back to basics, salt and pepper, reverse sear, then build on that from there. Once you've got that technique down, then build it up from there. As for the podcast, as to why listen, I'm actually about to start recording season 2 next week. And season 2 is going to be called Living the Dream. And I'm going to be interviewing 15 people from Australia and America who have taken their passion for barbecue and built that into a business. And so we're going to be talking to them about their story, about how they got where they did, tips and techniques that they might have for other people who are looking to get into the barbecue business, and taking it from there.
Oh, that's awesome indeed. Once again, that's the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. It is now available. Season 1 is available on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Player.fm, Overcast.fm, and Libsyn. And season 2 is coming right up. And I'll tell you what, I'll definitely be some great listening while we're cooking and grilling. Some great ingredients indeed. And also as well, if you really want an extensive look at competition barbecuing and exactly breaking down the different components, the different facets that you might need to know about or want to know about, including some great recipes to check out, you want to check out SmokingHotConfessions.com. It's a great read, and it's also some great articles in there and great blogs from you on how to become a better grill master indeed. Well, Ben, it's been truly a pleasure having you on the show, and I just cannot thank you enough. And I'll tell you what, as soon as a major grilling time comes around, I definitely want you to come back on the podcast to tell us again exactly the best ways to build that better barbecue.
Anytime, my friend. I've had a great time, and I really appreciate you having me on board.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we're so glad to have you on the Pop Culture Cosmos and the PCC Multiverse.